that NGOs, non-governmental organizations operating under the guidance of the Office of Refugee Resettlement under your leadership are placing children in unsafe, unvetted settings.
Let me repeat again. No child has gone missing under our watch. It's my time. No child has gone missing under our watch. Just to correct.
No children have gone missing on your watch?
Under our watch, no child has gone missing. Once we find the sponsor and transfer the child to the sponsor, we no longer have jurisdiction.
That was HHS Secretary Xavier Beccera being asked about immigrant children and their sponsors once they come across the border. The numbers that these members of Congress are referencing are coming from multiple different articles, but a lot of times it comes from this New York Times article, where they claim that HHS does not know the whereabouts of 85,000 children that have come across the border, and it's been a while since that number was cited, so it's surely higher. Overall, the reporting claims that about 1/3 of all children that come across the border have no contact with HHS. This is significant because the government is the one vetting their so-called sponsors, and the government is pretty horrible at vetting anyone when it comes to this. So it's a pretty safe bet to assume that a lot of children are with sponsors that are doing things that most people would probably not approve of. And that could range from trafficking all the way to just putting a child to work. For the most part, Beccera does what all government propagandists do. He says, "We're doing great, nothing to see here."
Last time that you were before this committee, I asked you about HHS's vetting procedures in light of reports that unaccompanied children were being placed with sponsors who were exploiting these children. At that time, you stated that you believed sponsors were properly vetted by HHS. In February, the HHS Office of Inspector General issued a report examining whether the Office of Refugee Resettlement took steps that were required to ensure the safe release of unaccompanied children through sponsor screening and follow-up calls. One of the findings from the report stated that the case files of 16% of unaccompanied children who were released to sponsors did not contain any documentation that a required safety check on the sponsor was conducted. Mr. Secretary, ORR received referrals for nearly 119,000, at least according to our records, of unaccompanied children in the fiscal year 23. That could mean over 19,000 children were released to sponsors without proper safety checks. Yes or no, do you still stand by your statement to me last year that HHS properly vetted sponsors?
I stand by my response, but Congressman, we need to clarify. You have mixed different numbers because the report that you reference, OIG, is from 2021. And now you mentioned 2023 numbers. And what you have to remember is in 2021, in the spring of 2021, we were barely coming in. We were taking over a program that had essentially been dismantled by the previous administration. So it was difficult to have spots for these children, and it was difficult to have an operation to be able to send them to sponsors as we're required by law. Things are very different from that point in 2021 today.
Then let's talk about that. Okay. My notebook is over there. I'd debate you a little further. But let's not quibble on that. What changes have been made as a result of this audit? And secondly, what changes have been made in regards to release of unaccompanied children to individuals who have previously sponsored children?
We have continued over those 3 years to improve the services that are provided to children. I would refer you to our foundational rule, which just became final this year, which takes a lot of those best practices. So today, for example, we have enough space for the children that are coming to us from the Department of Homeland Security. We're no longer having to use convention centers to house these kids because we didn't have the infrastructure in place. We established the infrastructure, which is the most important thing, because now they're getting the health care they need, they're getting the services they need as we prepare to send them to a vetted sponsor. Secondly, we're trying to follow up with your help in getting the resources. We're able to do not just the referral to a sponsor, but hopefully if you give us the resources, we'll be able to do follow-up. We don't have authority to do follow-up, or we're not required to, but we believe it's a good idea to do it. If you give us the resources, we'll continue to do more follow-up with these kids.
If a child who was under the care of HSS Unaccompanied Children program is found to be a victim of human labor trafficking, is the sponsorship immediately terminated, and does the federal government reclaim custody of the child?
So you've touched on the issue, the difficulty. Once we find the sponsor and transfer the child to the sponsor, we no longer have jurisdiction, authority over that child. And so when you ask, will the sponsorship be terminated? We don't have the authorities to just terminate because we don't have sight on what happens to the child once the child is in the sponsor's hand. You are welcome, and I've offered this before, Congress is welcome to give us more authority so we can follow
But
the child.
immediate action is taken. Immediate action is taken, though, once you find out there's a
Yes.
problem there.
Yes, if we're alerted, we will contact the appropriate authorities. But we don't have jurisdiction to try to stop that activity. Remember, if you're talking about a child being exploited in labor, they're already outside of our custody because the kids that are in our custody stay in our custody. They don't go out and work.
Are there circumstances under which the child will be returned to an immediate relative of the original sponsor?
I'm sorry.
Are there circumstances under which the child will be returned to an immediate relative of the original sponsor?
That is our priority, to make sure that we can place the child closest to whom they know. So a parent, if there's a parent available, an immediate relative, we seek to have them.
Is
if
there
they
a
pass the
vetting process for them as well?
Yes, there is. No one gets to sponsor a child without going through a vetting process, even if they're the parents.
I've got my very first question is something that unites us all. How about that? It also unites the American people because we're fired up. We're all fired up against people stealing our money. Medicaid and Medicare fraud. How much do we know how much is being stolen before our eyes, Mr. Secretary?
We don't have a precise number, but we know that there are folks who are always gaming the system.
It's a very big number. And how about this? I've got a report from the National Healthcare Anti-Fraud Association. There is such an association that does a little tracking. They say it's 100 billion. Does 100 billion sound about right, or is that just getting started?
You know, I've heard many numbers, but I wouldn't be surprised.
It's a big number. Mr. Secretary, the American people telling me we want our money back, and hopefully that we're going after it. The CNBC just did a little news story where they interviewed crooks that are stealing our money, and the crooks say, it's just so easy. It's unbelievable. I know that the administration is pursuing and persecuting people, some will say that haven't committed crimes at all, but what are we doing to go after bad guys that are stealing our money? Are we putting them in jail? Are we going after them?
We are. We have a team at HHS who does investigations. By the way, we are proposing $4 billion to help us do the investigations of fraud detection. For every dollar we invest, we return about $3 to $5 to the
Do we
taxpayer.
track that? We should
Yes,
put
we
that
do.
on our website. This is how much money we've got back. Now, when you find somebody that's committed fraud, do we kick them out of the program and can we ban them for life? Do you do that, Mr. Secretary?
We try to remove those who have violated the law.
I hope we do, because we want our money back. There's an issue, you know this, the American people who have health insurance and are covered sometimes get surprised by medical billing. They think they either go in for a procedure or have an emergency procedure, and they get multiple bills, yet they had health insurance. Congress 2 years ago passed the No Surprises Act to say enough. The only surprise has been the implementation of your administration that's kind of fumbled the ball, or at least that's what doctors are telling me. They're telling me it's a big surprise that it's not done yet. Is this on your radar screen, Mr. Secretary, to fix this problem?
Absolutely, but everybody saw the new game in town and everybody tried to get in, and only certain ones were eligible, and so that's what caused some of the chaos.
I hope you'll consider that. I'm meeting with doctors, there's anesthesiologists, there's dermatologists, there's everybody in here and saying we can't get relief.
The good thing is the consumers are now out of that food fight.
Let's hope so. Let's hope so. But people aren't getting paid, and it's no fun to work for free, and that's what's happening. Mr. Secretary, Florida, and I represent the free state of Florida. Florida Department of Children and Families just put out a report this week citing disturbing findings, and that is that NGOs, non-governmental organizations operating under the guidance of the Office of Refugee Resettlement under your leadership are placing children in unsafe, unvetted settings, and even worse, are explicitly prohibited from reporting concerns to law enforcement. Are you aware of this report?
Actually, the state of Florida took the initiative to remove the licensing requirement for these care centers, which doesn't make any sense.
Well, it doesn't make any sense that this report's come out that's devastating. I know we've talked about the 85,000 kids that are missing that we can't find, that you've called. I know you're calling to try to locate them, but we're still putting them, according to this report, we're putting them in
That's not
places that
accurate,
we
but
don't know.
That's not accurate, but I understand what you're
So
trying to say.
10-4. So you're aware of the report, and I know just earlier you talked about if a kid comes to our border and crosses line, and you gave the example a 15-year-old kid. 15-year-old kid wants a hearing. Then that 15-year-old kid is not sent back home. They're allowed to stay and given a hearing. What if that kid is 12 years old and says, I want a hearing? Would we do that for a 12-year-old?
If an individual crosses the border and says, I'm seeking asylum, by law...
Even 12. Okay, 9, 7. What age do we say, you know what, you belong with your parents? What age? You said a 12-year-old can do it. They can't get a tattoo in America because they're not old enough. But you're saying a 12-year-old can say, I'm leaving my family, and we keep them. So a 7-year-old, would you say a 7-year-old is enough to say, I want a hearing, and you would say, you need to stay. We're not going to put you back with our parents. Is that what you're saying, Mr. Secretary?
It's not what I say, Congressman. It's what you and Congress have said. And by statute, you say that if an individual requests
Mr. Secretary,
asylum,
I just think it's unacceptable as a parent that if
then you'll have to
these
change the
young
law.
kids are coming and we're not only are losing them, but we're not putting them back with the family.
you'll have to
Mr.
change the
Secretary,
law.
thanks for coming out today. And with that, Madam Chair, I yield back time.
I'm going to pick right up where Mr. Bean left off, because I too am a mom who is very, very concerned about the number of kids who've gone missing, unaccompanied minors who've gone missing under your watch. So you've said repeatedly...
Congresswoman, let me repeat
You
again.
said
No child has gone
repeatedly-
missing under
excuse
our
me,
watch.
it's my
No
time.
child has gone missing under our watch. Just to
There's
correct,
no children have gone missing on your watch?
under our watch, no child has gone missing.
So you know where all those 85,000 kids are?
Those children that are in our custody, we know
The
where
ones
they
that
are.
are in your custody. Okay, you keep repeating that. So
It's hard for me to
let
track people I don't have custody over.
This is my time, Mr. Secretary. I'm looking at a report from Axios back in 2021, and this says, this is critical of the Trump administration. Roughly 1 in 3 calls made to release migrant kids and their sponsors went unanswered, raising questions about the government's ability to protect minors after they're released to family members or others in the U.S. Mark Greenberg, who oversaw the unaccompanied minors program during the Obama administration, was briefed on Axios' findings and says that's very dismaying. If large numbers of children and sponsors aren't being reached, that's a very big gap in efforts to help them. So under the Trump administration, Axios reported that there were 1,500 kids that he lost that could not be accounted for. 1,500 kids under the Trump administration. Under your administration, that number is close to 85,000. On March 1st, 2023, the Homeland Security Act of 2022 transferred responsibilities for the care and placement of unaccompanied children from the Commission of the Immigration and Naturalization Service to the Director of the Office of Refugee Resettlement. Who does the Office of Refugee Resettlement, who does that director report to?
Congresswoman, if you
Is
want
that-
us
who
to
does
have
he report
jurisdiction
to?
over these children, you can give us that authority by law. Right now, we don't have the authority
Well, let
to
me
follow
just-
these children, and that's why it
Let
is
me just go
inaccurate to say
on.
that we've
Let
lost
me just
any
go
of them.
on, because
I just
I
wanted
think
to
that's
correct the record
inaccurate. One
because
of
you
the
have
things that you say,
misstated what we
excuse
do
me,
at ORR.
excuse me, this
I
is
just
my-
wanted to
this
correct
is
the
my
record,
time.
Congresswoman.
Please stop filibustering.
I understand, Congressman. I just
Please
wanted to
stop
correct the
filibustering.
record of what
Madam
you said.
Chair. So, Office of Refugee Resettlement is under the Department of Homeland of HHS. That is your department. Since then, since March 1st of 2003, ORR has cared for thousands of children incorporating, quote, child welfare values. ORR takes into consideration the unique nature of each child's situation and incorporates child welfare principles when making placement, clinical, case management, and release decisions that are in the best interest of the child. Are 85,000 missing children, is that in their best interest?
Again, Congresswoman, you are mischaracterizing what's going on.
I don't believe I am, sir. I worked in child welfare, and what's happening
Then
to
if
these
you think
kids...
85,000 children are missing, why haven't you tried to pass a law to make sure we can find them?
I
If you're
believe
so
that,
concerned-
I believe that what's happening is you're releasing them from your custody. That's what I believe is
No,
happening.
we're
Because
doing
if they're
what the law
under
requires,
ORR
ma'am.
authority, then it is
Congresswoman,
your
we're doing what the law-
responsibility to
we're
care
doing-
for those children, and it is your
While they're in our
responsibility to
custody.
watch out for them. It
You don't-
absolutely is.
okay,
Now,
then you don't
let me go
recognize and
back
understand the
to-
law. The
let me
law
go
does not
back
give us
to,
the authority to do what
according
you
to the
just said,
FBI,
Congresswoman.
more than 98% of all children that go missing in the United States are found. However, less than 1% of all migrant children reported missing to HHS between October 2019 and April of 2023 have been found. This, I'd like to submit for the record, this is from the Center for Public Integrity, a spike in reports of missing and runaway migrant kids. Beginning in 2020 up to 2022, we see, if you can see, a huge spike in the number of reports of missing and runaway migrant children, again, under HHS authority. Only 1%
They are not
of
under
those
HHS authority, ma'am. I keep
without
trying to
objection.
clarify that for you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I am extremely frustrated as a mom, as a former child caseworker. Democrats were very critical of Donald Trump and his administration when there were 1,500 kids that fell into this category. Under this administration, there's an unbelievable number of 85,000 missing migrant children. I would encourage the department to not release these kids when they find placement and to keep track of them for their own personal safety. With that, I'd like to yield the remainder of my time to Representative Owens.